Welcome, Climate Viewers. My name is Jim Lee from ClimateViewer News at ClimateViewer.com and ClimateViewer.org. It is July 16th, 2017. It is now time for Chemtrails from Space, Part 2. So in our last video, which was 2 weeks ago because I took a week off to go to the beach, we covered chemtrails from space, sounding rockets, clouds of barium, lithium, and the like dumped into space from about 1952 to 1978. Tonight we're going to cover 1978 to present. And I've really been looking forward to this. I have done zero preparation for this tonight. All the preparation has been made long before today. It's all been available on weathermodificationhistory.com since December. And I hope that you guys will dig into that. I'm right now working on a section specifically about these rockets. Ironically, today my BIOS on my motherboard corrupted, which was interesting. And I managed to have a backup BIOS. Touche. So I'm back here tonight to do this anyway. And we're going to talk about this rocket thing is something that is not well understood. A lot of people attribute barium and lithium to chemtrails. And when they say chemtrails, they're referring to Delta Airlines and secret planes with secret pipes and pumps. But I can assure you, beyond a shadow of a doubt, provable in court, all day, air day, that you can prove that aluminum and barium and strontium, sulfur hexafluoride, trimethyl aluminum, that these chemicals have been dumped in space for the last 60 years. And nobody knows about it. And what goes up must come down. And I'm sure that there's some alchemical changes along the way due to solar light and all that. We won't get too fancy with the scientific side. I assure you, at some point in the future, I will have a scientist on this program to explain in graphic detail all of the funkiness that occurs. But in our last video, let's get to it. We talked about a scientist dying who had a pretty dire prediction about rockets and their effect on the climate. And his name was Harry Wexler. And in 1962, he was supposed to give a speech where he would tie rockets burning holes in the ionosphere and their exhaust plumes to the destruction of the ozone hole and the ozone layer, which led to the ozone hole, which all of us know we were clearly blamed for. They said that we were putting CFCs in the environment. It was all our fault. Greenhouse gases burnt down the ozone hole. Yet Harry Wexler tried to warn them that not only would rockets destroy the environment, burn up the ozone layer, that if someone were to continue this on a global scale, that one could control weather on a global scale. And instead of hearing that as a bad thing, Harry mysteriously died. Tonight, we're going to go into a second mysterious death, the death of Bernard Eastlund. Bernard Eastlund was a very smart man who worked for a company called ARCO, APTI. These guys had patents related to and technology related to HAARP. So in this video today, we're going to talk about how rockets and barium clouds have something to do with HAARP. And I can assure you that it will be an eyeful. And it is all well referenced on climateviewer.com/HAARP, on weathermodificationhistory.com. And all of this is mapped out in 3D on climateviewer.org. So now I'm going to break down the history. this is recorded for posterity, so I do suggest you come back and review the notes. We're going to attempt to do 1978 to present. I will try to keep this as succinct as possible, but still flesh out as much details as possible. Oddly enough, at the beginning of the show, not only did my BIOS get destroyed earlier, which I had to recover from, but just upon starting the show, I checked and I clicked on my head to go to my channel, and it said my channel wasn't there. So I thought I was crazy. And then I typed in my channel, youtube.com/Jim Lee ClimateViewer, and I got this. So I refreshed it a couple times. Hopefully, hey, we're live now. I'm going to refresh it. It'll work. Come on. Show me I'm wrong. Oh, you just saw it live, people. I typed in my YouTube channel. I hit refresh. I got no page. That is definition soft censorship. So please hit your subscribe buttons. They mean nothing. On this rocket thing, we're going to start at 1978. I'm over here on weathermodificationhistory.com. If you scroll down past these sections to the timeline, which is right here, you can see there is a filter button, which I will click, and I will click on space weather. Now this is going to replace the 20 entries here and put up just the stuff about the rockets and the space weather, and we're going to go through that. So I want to check real quick because I'm seeing that I'm not getting any images loading, which means I'm having a crazy day with the coincidences. How are we doing out there in the YouTube world? Can you guys hear me in chat? Am I having an echo? Just checking before I go on for 30 minutes and find out I was saying absolutely nothing. Because if my channel's not there, my pictures aren't loading, this may get weird real quick. Anybody in the chat, do you guys hear me? Nothing? I know there's a delay. Moving along. Let's bring that thing up. And it does appear everything seems to be working. So let's just press on. Coming down here to 1978. About right here. We're going the wrong way. And we were right around here. So I think we ended the video last time in 1978 around NMOD, which was the Convention on the Prohibition of Military and Other Hostile Use of Environmental Modification Techniques, which was a UN law signed banning weather warfare as a result of our shenanigans in Operation Popeye, where the U.S. Air Force did cloud seeding over Vietnam. So weather warfare was banned in 78, and did that stop any of the rockets and chemtrails from space? If anything, it accelerated it. So my good buddy Dominic Maramo over at Weather Modification History with me sent me this jewel today from 1975. Yes, I realize I'm stepping back over my line, which I clearly said at 1978, but it's too good to pass up. So this one's called, it's from New Scientist, 1975, A Busy Winter for Rocketeers. Space research with rockets is often overshadowed by satellite operations, but there's a lot to do with simpler techniques. And in this paper, they describe how 12 separate rocket experiments went on simultaneously. And they say that they were, and this one here it is right here. This really got my attention. Check this out. Teams from the UK, University College London, UCL, with launch support from the Atomic Weapons Research Establishment, AWRE, my gosh, Germany Max Planck Institute, and Denmark Meteorological Institute collaborated this winter to shoot a whole bunch of rockets. The UK provided 4 petrol rockets with sodium lithium cloud releases at 160 kilometers and downwards. The Germans, 3 black brants The Black Brant sounding rocket is still in use today. And that's the ones they use up at Wallops that you guys hear about them doing the lithium release just recently. Still in use today, Black Brants with shaped barium charges and other experiments, including 3-axis magnetometers, while the Danes flew the Nike Tomahawk with thermite cloud releases. Thermite. You're right, dude. Kathy Bradbury brings up an excellent point. Going to digress for uno momento. You know, I was having a lot of really weird internet things, and my page not coming up could be something as crazy as a CME. I used to be work for a company where I did the IT for five different buildings, and I would notice when we would have massive solar flares or CMEs that we would have ghosts in the machine. I had printers that would print garbage. They were dot matrix printers. They would just print garbage on those days by themselves. Amazing, weird ghosts in the machine from CMEs. So yeah, good point. Thanks for bringing that up. Good eyes, Kathy. So back to the story. So right there, we've got a whole bunch of rockets, 4 from the UK, 3 from the Germans, and the Danes flew a Nike Tomahawk with a thermite cloud release. Now, that's a new one on me. I just found that out tonight because Dominic sent me this one, and I was sitting there with my mouth agape, probably as you do. Each barium cloud ionizes after the shape charge has sent it into high velocity outwards, roughly parallel to the field lines of the magnetosphere. So what basically these guys are doing, in case you don't know what a sounding rocket is or you missed the last video, I suggest you see it. Chemtrails in Space, Part 1. The ionosphere and the magnetosphere, the Van Allen belts, the things that make up the force field of our planet is invisible. So in order for them to see it, in order for them to modify it, they have to be able to see it. So they dump chemicals in space. The chemicals align themselves according to the magnetic field in the sky. And in that magnetic field are something called magnetic field lines, where it's strongest. And these are like strings in the Van Allen belts themselves and the magnetosphere, ionosphere, mesosphere. Whenever they release these chemicals, they tend to stretch themselves along those magnetic field lines or parallel to them. This allows them to visualize our ionosphere, which is invisible. It is a tracer. They do this in the human body. They put barium in your bloodstream, and then they trace it around so that they can see things that otherwise would be invisible to their instruments. They do it in the sky with chemtrails from planes, where they use satellite observations of linear clouds to determine wind speed, as crazy as that is. Regardless, we're going far afield. So this stuff, these rockets in space, the thing goes on, and then it talks about a third major. Skip this middle one right here in particular. This one right here says contributed 4 petrels to twilight TMA cloud releases. Now, a TMA cloud release is a trimethyl aluminum cloud release. So what I try to tell people when I first meet them and they're going on about chemtrails and Delta Airlines dumping aluminum and barium on people, I have to state cautiously that right here you can see the UK guys dumping clouds of trimethyl aluminum in space and 2 daytime sodium lithium ones, because lithium is visible during the daytime. Won't get too deep into that right now. But this is the kind of stuff that was going on in 1975. And it says, just after this 12 launch series, a group from Southampton University will arrive at Thumba to collaborate with the ISRO, this time in launching particle measuring payloads to complement previous work. So they're going to put some more instruments up there so that the next time they go shooting off a bunch more rockets, you know, they can get down with the sickness, I guess. Right here, they even go say, have a nice reference for you guys if you like to read books. See Space Experiments with Barium Clouds by Professor Reimar Lust, New Scientist, Volume 53, page 154. This is not a conspiracy. This is conspiracy meets reality. So thank you, Dominic, for throwing that one out to me, homie. Yes, Wallops Island, Jason. Wallops is the current the rocket range of choice on the East Coast, and it's associated with the Haystack University at MIT, where they have a X-band radar. Instead of HAARP, they use that bad boy. So let's get back to it. So I was just talking about shaped barium charges from the Germans. In the timeline, right about here, high explosive shaped barium charges pound the ionosphere. Details. And we can see this here. Am I going to get a single picture to load tonight? Of course I'm not, because I'm loading it from my local host. So why not? Let's fire that bad boy up. Give me a second here. So what I did was I actually had this thing loading from my home page. So I'm not actually on it. I'm loading from my server because I was coding earlier and I'm a derp. I had this in full screen. It did not realize I was local. Let's just type in weather mod history and go to the actual website, and then maybe some freaking photos. All right, guys, you get a good laugh. Get a good laugh. Happens all the time. So there's photos. It's working beautifully. Space weather. Do the photos load? Do the photos load? The photos load. Yay. All right, so where were we? We were at shaped rocket charges right there. High explosive shaped barium charges pound ionosphere, and you can see the paper for that. Glad that's finally working. Thank you very much. God. All right, so little too big there. Oh my God, I'm hurting my eyes. All right, back to it. So we were at 70. So then this is the last one I covered from the end of the final video, the first part of the video, NASA Project Cameo, barium cloud over Alaska. And this was another, sounding rocket thing. And you can see it right there, Bangor Daily News, 1978. And then Project Waterhole, interrupting auroral activity by dumping water in space. So a lot of this stuff comes from trying to not only, modify the ionosphere for military and communication purposes, but from just trying to understand what the heck is going on up at the North Pole, because there's this area where basically our force field touches the ground. And then there's this hole at the North and South Pole, and it's called the auroral electrojet or the auroral cap. But this hole is where the energy races down to the ground, and that's where we have the aurora borealis at the north and the aurora australis in the south. So both the North and South Pole have this effect where, incoming solar radiation races down the magnetic field lines, and you can see it as visible light. These guys want to interrupt that process by dumping water into it. And you can see in their little picture there, they release water vapor into F region above aurora. H2O and CO2 ions dissociatively recombine to produce ion hole, water hole, reduce ionospheric conductivity, and disrupt auroral current system, and read the references for the rest of that creepy tale. And of course, all of these entries on weather modification history, if you click share right here, it's going to give you a URL that you can come straight to this. You can share it with your friends and say, hey, have you ever heard of Project Waterhole? That's some crazy stuff. Links are provided right there. Fun stuff. So then comes the U.S. military. Now we're jumping ahead to 1986. Now, of course, if I tried to put everything into this timeline, it would get overwhelming real quickly. But I found a way to do that in the future. This thing will always grow. But this is when the military really gets involved with Stanford's Star Lab. And basically they start coming up with some pretty interesting ways of modifying the ionosphere in congruity with the rocket experiments. And I think this is a great one right here. We should point out that the study was one of the new concepts in ionospheric modification. And there's a real strong word there, ionospheric modification, based on our electron beam work. Electron beams on rockets beam aboard a rocket, get to that in a second, and thus no effort was directed towards work on ionospheric modification by means of high-powered, ground-based, incoherent scatter radars like HAARP. We'll get to that. Or by well-established methods such as barium or other similar chemical releases in the ionosphere, the sounding rockets. And you can see this is from DTIC.mil right there. And you can see that this is Stanford University Star Laboratory, Stanford, California, and dated April 1986 and September 87. So interesting stuff. The show will go on. I'm hearing about other people getting hacked in chat. Yeah, man, it's been a crazy, crazy day. I've been working on computers since I was 15 years old. I'm 40 now. I've seen 2 corrupted BIOSes in my life, and I had one this morning. But knowing how crazy it is and reading some of these documents online about how governments, defense contractors can put super malware into your BIOS and destroy a hard drive. Even if you remove the hard drive and put a new one in, you're still rooted. It's called a super root kit. I had the wherewithal to buy a motherboard that had a hardwired backup BIOS in it. And shout out to Gigabyte Ultra Durable BIOS. Just whatever, man. Coincidences, I'm sure. Let me wet my whistle and we will return with the beam experiment aboard a rocket. So this bad boy is similar to the other rockets, but not only that, but they're going to put a particle accelerator in the back of the rocket that shoots out the rear of it to accelerate electrons back through the hole it just made in the ionosphere. Ionospheric holes is a boring holes in the ionosphere. This kind of stuff gets kind of interesting. So that was in 1989, July 13. And, more DTIC.mil links on that. International Treaties and Active Experiments in Space, 1989. An ability to reduce trapped radiation would increase orbit selection options for future space-based surveillance systems. Keywords: radiation belts, wave particle interactions, environment modification. And this is on the old school DTIC.mil link there, and I got to archive it at, and there's my old website back when I was at resonated.net. But, that is the Space Physics Division Geophysical Lab at Hanscom Air Force Base, Maine, talking about, hey, it's 1989. What kind of international treaties affect our ability to do active experimentation or own the weather in space? See America nailed it right there. Very good eyes there, See America. Appreciate that. Because we're coming up very quickly, because right now here we're at 1989 to the 1995 owning the weather papers. Very, very much true. So then in 89 as well, this is when HAARP becomes a thing, like a big time thing. The U.S. Air Force, Navy, and DARPA plan to create the HAARP heater, as we can see here. And it goes a little something like this, because a lot of people really don't know how, this thing came about. And trust me, we're still going to get to Bernard Eastlund. The fact that he was murdered before going to a weather modification conference to talk about steering tornadoes, it's coming. But Eastlund had already contributed in patent form to this HAARP, High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program, Joint Services Program Plans and Activities. This was this came from a FOIA, and you can see pictures of it here. This is the cover. It's got the Air Force Geophysics Lab, Office of Naval Research, February 1990. You can click the little area here. We can flip through them. Workshop on ionospheric modification and generation of ELF waves. Now, we've talked about ELF waves in a lot of my other videos. I will revisit that in the near future. Thursday, 11 January 1990. That's where I chose my date from. And you can see the people that were there, their names. Penn State University, Arco Power Technology, Dennis Papadopoulos, a name that I have repeated many times. It's in my video, How HAARP Really Works. Dennis Papadopoulos is a very major mover in this entire HAARP thing, and he's at the University of Maryland. Raymond Ingram, I won't get too far into it. Anyway, we're in the weeds. So you can see there, they had a meeting about screwing with the ionosphere and how they'd go about doing it, and then they lay out the summary of the steering group activities and schedule, and then they mention all of the ionospheric heaters currently available today in 1990. NIR in Dushanbe, Sura, Gorky, Manchagorsk. That's a new one on me. And then they give their radiated powers over here in megawatts. So that's a gigawatt there. Gigawatt down here at Tromsø, Norway, which is new at the time, it says in 1990. Plattsville, Colorado, which was closed. Fairbanks, Alaska, and Arecibo, Puerto Rico. Now, of course, being the nosy individual I am, I mapped all those out. And you can see them here. Of course, we have the Tromsø, Norway heater up here. And it is called the ASCAD 3D. And you can see a little map of that. That's the upgraded version of it. Come on down here to the ground and look at that bad boy and see all the details on it. So that is the Tromsø one. And it looks like that. Not too hard to find. So this heater was around in 1990, and it was new, and it actually has 3 separate heaters there, each with different frequencies, as you can see. But generally speaking, for an ionospheric heater to work, it has to be between 2 and 10 megahertz, generally speaking. And the reason why, any higher, it'll shoot through the ionosphere. Any lower, it'll probably bounce off of it. They need a specific frequency and power to dump energy into the ionosphere, and that's what they figured out. So coincidentally, these are along the North and South Pole, because that's where the electrojet is. It's a big circle right along the North and South Pole. But then we have the equatorial electrojet, which Puerto Rico is centered over. So now, getting too far ahead, but we are talking about the present. Let's mix it all up. The Arecibo Observatory Enhanced High Frequency Ionospheric Heater is a new style of heater where they combine antennas like HAARP with a big chain link fence hanging overhead. And this is in the big dome from the 007 movie, where they have the fight on the catwalk overhead. Well, this little dot right here is a guy, and that's a 72-foot tall ionospheric heater antenna they built in the bottom of it. You can see in this picture down here. Let me see if I can bring you over there a little bit. In this little diagram, come over one more time. You can see that there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of those 72 feet tall antennas. And what did I put the power at? I got it over here in my notes, with a power of 600,000 watts coming out of it. So that's the ionospheric heater at Arecibo, Puerto Rico. And that bad boy actually has been around since the 80s, but the original one was destroyed by a hurricane, so they've rebuilt it. That's why they call it the enhanced high frequency one there, because their first one got blown over. So it says effective radiated power at 200 megawatts and 6 cross dipole antennas at several megahertz. Boy, we're getting sciencey. Regardless, this is the list of effective vertical heating facilities, or ionospheric heaters. I likes to call them sky heaters. I think it's catchy. Just ionosphere is such a long ass word. Anyway, we won't get into all that. So back to the timeline. Let's not wear it out. So look through that. That's all the military, how we came to discussing circumventing InMod and modifying the ionosphere. And their logic basically lies in the premise, and there's a quote in there, well, we're only going to be modifying it for like anywhere from 5 seconds to 5 minutes. And the minute we turn the heaters off, it goes back to the way it was. So, I mean, we're not causing any long-lasting effects. Therefore, we're not violating InMod. So we were talking about the Arecibo heater. And interestingly enough, they have this thing called CRES, which is the Combined Release and Radiation Effects Satellite. Now, CRES is a satellite that does what the sounding rockets have been doing for, many years up to this point. We're at 40 years in. They said, well, wouldn't it be great if we could just, put a satellite in space and then have it, we push a button and it just releases the barium for us. Wouldn't that be great? So, of course, that's exactly what they did. And here is the military report on that from the Phillips Laboratory Directorate on Geophysics, Air Force Material Command at Hanscom Force Base, Massachusetts. Multiple instrument studies of chemical releases and heating at Arecibo. The name says it all. And that is the Combined Release and Radiation Effects Satellite logo there. There's a picture of the satellite. I put those over the cover of this, and this is in 1995 on the cover of that. So these experiments that are documented in these reports right here are, pretty much from 1990 to 93. And here's their actual website. I just clicked the link. It's still there, and that's from the University of Iowa. And you can read all about it. Dumping barium and all that stuff in space from a satellite. You get the picture. And of course, there is the picture again of the heater. Not the old heater that was actually used to do this experiment. I want to hear it from the trolls. Yes, that's the new heater, not the old one. So back to the story. Utah State University studies in plasma modification 92. Triggering the high-frequency breakdown of the atmosphere by barium release, 1993, going along. And then finally, 1999, HAARP is operational. So now they actually got the thing built up, plugged in, and they can get it on. You can see here was when they were actually building it. They weren't complete with the towers. And here is the original Navy research lab link to that. I didn't want to get off on whole bunch of tangents. I know there's a lot of websites on it, so I just threw one up there. What the hey. And at this point, HAARP was 960 kilowatts. So that's 1990. Then, of course, the big paper everybody knows about, Owning the Weather in 2025, in which, of course, they do mention ionospheric heating and other forms of modifying space. Triggering lightning avoidance for space launches using lasers to make lightning bolts channel along them is space weather related. Launches, we'll skip it for tonight. Weather Modification Test Technology Symposium. So after the Owning the Weather papers and all of the debunkers, hell, even Snopes, they say that, owning the weather wasn't a thing. It was just a paper. It meant nothing. They're full of crap, and here's the proof in the pudding. The Army and the Air Force had a joint meeting wherein they discussed the Owning the Weather papers and how to make it a reality. So just so we're clear, I'm going to bring it up over here, and you can see the original document. I uploaded that to my script, and you can see here it's got all the usual Air Force tackiness all over it, and it says Test Technology Symposium 97, Session B, Advanced Weapons Instrumentation Technologies at the Johns Hopkins University Applied Physics Laboratory by Dr. Arnold J. Barnes Jr., Senior Scientist, Optical Effects Division, Phillips Laboratory, 1997. And in this, he immediately shows this is straight from Owning the Weather. This chart right here, potential weather modification capabilities, Air Force 2025. So the Owning the Weather papers were more than a think piece. This doctor at this university, Johns Hopkins University, said, how do we make this a reality? And then he goes into it. Treaty issues, NMOD. And he says, well, we won't do it for very long. So they are permitted under the UN treaty. Local non-permanent changes such as precipitation enhancement, hail suppression, fog, and cloud dispersal are permitted under UN. Since 1978, the official U.S. Air Force position has been that weather modification had little utility or military payoff as a weapon of war. The official Air Force position needs to be reevaluated. In light of the 19 years of scientific advances, in light of the advanced weapon systems which are more environmentally sensitive to prepare against technological surprise, and they go back to the chart. So this Owning the Weather thing is a real, and boom, there's HAARP. In the notes for this slide for HAARP, they refer to it as a weapon system. Thank you for tackifying my video script. So this is where we're going with this thing, that this is a serious problem, that, these guys are using our ionosphere as a bug zapper and a laboratory for designing and modifying our environment as a weapon. And that is a great concern to me. That's why I've spent so much time laying this out in great detail for you. So coincidentally, March 97, Dr. Arnold Barnes gives a speech where he says, let's make Owning the Weather a reality, talks about HAARP. April 28th, 1997. I made this photo years ago. It's been on more websites than you can imagine. It originally said weather warfare there, and I didn't put my reference there, but regardless, I changed it to Geophysical instead of weather warfare, revised it. And I put the guy's face there because people don't tend to understand the levity and the importance of this quote. Others are engaging in an eco type of terrorism whereby they can alter the climate to set off earthquakes, volcanoes remotely through the use of electromagnetic waves. What is he talking about? At the terrorism, weapons of mass destruction, and U.S. strategy at the Sam Nunn Policy Forum in the University of Georgia in Athens, Georgia in 97, right after Dr. Arnold J. Barnes lays out the case that, hey, let's make owning the weather a reality. And here comes the Secretary of Defense, William Cohen, saying one of the craziest quotes I've ever read in my life. Well, it's not a coincidence. Here's the high volt tether to remove radiation from space, putting the tether in space to suck space radiation out. All the while, rockets are still going off every day. Rockets, rockets, rockets. HAARP ionospheric instrument completed 2006. It is now at full power at 3.6 million watts. And there's a picture of it in all its glory. And we can see that bad boy right over here on ClimateViewer 3D. Of course, it's in my ionospheric heater list right here. But right here, high frequency active auroral research project, and it'll fly you down to the ground. And you can see HAARP yourself, from the engines that run it to the VHF radar that's next to it, the MUIR radar that's over here on a table, the actual instrument itself from the satellite view, along with other photos. Do I think that earthquake uptake in the world has to do with ionospheric heaters? Do I believe that messing with the ionosphere has a lot to do with increase in earthquake activity? There are many documented cases of people who prospect the ground using VLF and ELF ground-based radars, just little ones, who've set off earthquakes. It's well documented. So yes, this is a very serious issue. The ramifications of which will not be fully divulged to the public until some congressmen start taking this seriously. And that's the hope of my channel and my work, is for this stuff to be taken seriously with more references than you can shake a stick at. So, in order for me to continue to do that, please hit up the bottom right there, the GoFundMe, the PayPal. I appreciate your support. All of this work is free, and it's done to really separate the BS from the truth and get to the nuts and butts of this so we can get something done about it. So here we are, 2008, and the death of Bernard Eastlund. Steering tornadoes with HAARP and solar-powered satellites. Atmospheric heating as a research tool, Monday, April 2008. Lyle M. Jenkins, on behalf of the late Bernard Eastlund, Eastlund Scientific Enterprises Corporation, Houston, Texas. Now, because it would be kind of weird for me to start playing that video for you, I want to assure you that I got this video, and I'm going to click it real quick just so you can see that it's a thing. There's an old version of my Google Earth website. We'll skip past it to the first slide. And there you go. Let's close that. Dr. Bernard Eastlund, Lyle M. Jenkins. Now, at the very beginning of this, he says, sorry, Eastlund died before he could make it here to this weather modification conference, but I'm going to try my best to do this presentation anyway. And in it, they go through, creating ionized plasma patterns in the sky or artificial ionospheric mirrors. They go through, using HAARP as a potential facility to beam energy from the ground up to the International Space Station, collect it on the ISS, and redirect it at tornadoes and hurricanes to steer them. And I know you're saying, Jim, that's got to be crazy. I mean, you're making this up. This is called what they like to call cosmic particle ignition, or using galactic cosmic rays to change the electron temperature density, reflect things off of it. Won't get too deep into that, and I don't want to get too sciencey. But let's just try to get to the slide here, because it's always fun to see this kind of stuff like this. In here, you see a microwave beam from a satellite shooting a tornado. And he calls this the thunderstorm solar powered satellite. And let's see if we can get that slide to load. And he talks about the problems with, actually doing that. Oh my God, it's a lot of energy. But, we could possibly, fire some beams at it from space. And, then here is the slide where he says power to Earth from the ISS, power Earth to ISS 2008, rectenna on ISS, antenna on Earth. That's HAARP shooting energy up to the ISS. And of course, then they go the other way around. Power ISS to Earth 2009, antenna on ISS, shooting it back down to the ground. This video has been on my YouTube since I think 2013. Let's see. It's got about 5,000 views. 2012. So that's one of my early research pieces right there. You can see that video is 5 years old. And still to this day, most people do not know about this video or how important it is. It is, of course, referenced here. Now, the paper that it comes from is right here. And this is at the Weather Planned and Inadvertent Weather Conference. And I think it's the 20th annual. And this is where I got the video from. So I downloaded it. There is along with it. And there's a recorded presentation. And all of this is on the AMS. So these weather modification conferences, you should check them out. They're pretty scary. But that's where I got this from. So yes, pretty interesting. Put a rectenna on the space station and have a big base array antenna on the surface of the Earth. Beam it up and collect the energy and determine the transmission effects, losses, and that sort of thing. And then we would hope to put an antenna on the station to do the opposite. Beam it down to the surface of the Earth. That's mentioned at 6:30 where he says HAARP, talking about the rectenna. A rectenna is a rectangular antenna. Does that look like a rectangular antenna to you? Looks like a rectangular antenna to me. I don't know about you. Looks pretty darn rectangular to me. So there's your rectenna. He has the slides there to prove it. And weather modification is possible by, for example, altering upper atmosphere wind patterns or altering solar absorption patterns by constructing one or more plumes of atmospheric particles, which will act as a lens or focusing device. So what the hell is he talking about there? Because that's super creepy, right? What he's talking about is the artificial ionospheric mirror or the atmospheric lens, which is a plasma pattern, as you can see in that photo right there. This plasma pattern allows the solar energy itself to be focused as well. And if they can do that, then they can steer hurricanes and tornadoes. And that is of great concern to everybody. Another paper most people don't know about, Operational Defenses Through Weather Control in 2030, followed the other two military papers from Owning the Weather and the Air Force Test Technology Symposium 97. That was in 2009. Won't get into it. Now we're back to rockets. Charged Aerosol Release Experiment, the CARE project. Don't you love the irony of the NASA guys? I mean, they care. They care so much they dumped 66 kilograms of aluminum oxide up into the space, from a rocket. And here's all the papers about it, but there's the picture. And in this, I've got 4 pictures in one. Let's see. Let's go and open this image in new window. And that way I can zoom in on it. And you can see here, ground-based radar at MIT, launch site here. Rocket does this, dumps that out there. And objectives of the CARE project to create an artificial noctilucent cloud. Has anybody ever heard of a noctilucent cloud? Noctilucent clouds are the highest clouds in our atmosphere. They are formed usually up in the mesosphere, and they are usually made of meteorite dust. They are also known as electric blue clouds. They glow at night, and they are freaking cool. And what do we have here over on the side? A Black Brant 12 engine. So the Black Brant that the Germans were using back in 78, still in use today. And this, of course, is from the Andoya rocket range. And there is a trimethyl aluminum release, very distinctive color, the blue and the white trail there. And you can see that they measured that from a ground-based radar there. Dust cloud. They also call them dust clouds. So barium clouds, ion clouds, noctilucent clouds, dust clouds, metal oxide clouds. That's what they refer to, these chemtrail clouds in space from rockets and satellites. Release of the solid rocket motor, large concentration of dust, supersonic injection velocity so they can see how it spreads, experiment enhancements, ground and shipped ionosphere diagnostic, direct injection biochemical release module. And let's see up here, they got the picture of how the whole thing's supposed to go. Rocket goes up 350 kilometers in the air, right about here. They dump it, comes down this way, large time settling charged particles. And over here, ground base, high frequency VHF and UHF radar, all measuring that. Boom. So the thing I've been saying for like since 2012 about HAARP is you need rockets. And the thing I've been saying to the chemtrail community, trying to pull them back from some of the ledge, is that, obviously terminology matters. And if you're talking about chemtrails being a cloud of aluminum and barium, I would stop blaming Delta Airlines so much and start looking a little higher. I would look up for chemtrails from space. Back to the story. So that's and you guys, you may notice the thing that's different about me than a lot of other channels is I'm going to try to laugh at this, because to be quite honest with you, this stuff would make any person want to cry when you realize what we've been doing to our environment, that these mad scientists are allowed to change the very electrical nature of our entire planet without any consent from us, to take away something like the heartbeat of our planet and the Schumann resonance and totally obliterate it, to, just pluck the strings of the magnetic field lines and not care if it creates earthquakes or it's, makes the jet stream joggle and toggle. And that, there are many prominent people who've said that Russia and America are in weather wars, modifying the jet stream using Sura and HAARP. There's so much out there that, of course, we're not going to be privy to. But damn it, in today's age, we should be. So that's why I created weathermodificationhistory.com. That's why this information is so important. That's why I partnered with Dominic Marama. He's going back through these newspapers and pulling up history by the neck load. And we're going to get to the bottom of this one way or another till everybody gets it. Because at this point, it's getting kind of creepy with, DARPA Project Nimbus with laser guided lightning weapons, and HAARP creating fire in the sky. The Naval Research Lab creates largest plasma ball in the sky. They even brag about it. I mean, they got no shame about it. Here you go. I'm going to hit up the Navy live on a YouTube channel. They just got a little little poke from me to you. Naval research scientists produce densest Arctic plasma clouds using HAARP. And this is dated 2013. I did an article on this, and the Naval Research Lab retweeted me. Memories like the corner of a mind. Back to the thing. So, and we're gonna end with AMAG right there, 2012. So I'm gonna stop with the timeline right now, because I didn't want to overkill that section, on weather mod history. And we'll go over here to HAARP and end with this. So a lot of people have a question, where are we today? What's really going on? And the truth of the matter is that HAARP has been sold. The military says they are done with their experiments at HAARP. And the question everybody's been asking me is why? And there's been a lot of speculation about that. But the bottom line was that HAARP was an experimental test bed. So part of what Eastlund was talking about is there's this book by Margaret Cheney, and it's on Tesla, called Man Out of Time, and it's got this new intro that's been added to the book later, wherein she describes them shooting electricity through the sky, that they referred to it as a pipeline in the sky, that they could shoot electricity from Alaska down to America instead of turning the natural gas into liquid and putting it into a pipe and pumping it down to America, or putting it on trucks and driving it down to America, that they could take that natural gas, turn it into electricity, shoot it into the sky, and catch it down in America. Well, that's fascinating. Is it what's going on? Possibly. They tried that, actually. They shot it down to the EVLA, which is down in New Mexico, and I think they only caught like a watt or two. I mean, they put 3 million watts into the sky, 1 or 2 watts less than that landed in New Mexico. So at the end of the day, what they learn is that all that water vapor along the way absorbs all of that energy. So anybody who's ever put a cup of water in their microwave realizes that when you turn microwaves on a cup of water, it boils. So all of that energy gets lost to heat. So we have microwaves heating our skies, ionospheric heaters, sky heaters all over the planet now. The military says they don't want HAARP anymore, so they sold it to the University of Alaska. The University of Alaska is currently renting it out. You can go up to the open house at HAARP. They have one every year. I think they have them more often than that. But you can actually go up and visit the facility, and they'll take you around, show you everything. So why? Everybody asks why. And the answer is very simple, that now they have decided to go with boats. And I've covered this in other videos. HAARP on a boat. Ionospheric heaters go mobile. This is October 2014 on ClimateViewer.com. So just type it, go to ClimateViewer.com/HAARP. And down at the bottom, I have my HAARP essential reading, which will get you up to date on all this stuff, how they're using them to destroy the Van Allen belts, how they've gone way past just using rockets to diagnose the ionosphere. They are currently sucking the radiation out of the sky. It's called radiation belt remediation. They are modifying the ionosphere by creating artificial ionospheric mirrors. I just did a recent one on the laser developed atmospheric lens that the BAE defense company is using. It's getting kind of crazy. I mean, now they've got lasers into the mix for creating these artificial ionospheric mirrors. But the point about the boats is that, they have decided that they can use things like Mirage, the microwave ionosphere reconfiguration ground-based emitter, which is a U.S. Army version that they can put on the back of a trailer behind a truck. So the U.S. Army has a HAARP on a trailer. Satellite ionospheric heaters. Satellite-borne RF sounders can act as mobile ionospheric heaters. And this is from NASA Technical Reports. Topside sounders as mobile ionospheric heaters. So, whoa, there you go. Now we're back to the, ground versus satellite thing. And guess what? Topside sounders as mobile ionospheric heaters in space. So they don't need them on the ground anymore. They took the chemical releases, put them on satellites. Then they put HAARP on a satellite. Gets weirder, right? Gets weirder every year. So boats, submarines, planes, and drilling rigs. Project Lucy, I covered this. Project Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, where they're using multiple HAARP style radar beams at 13.56 megahertz to compress atmospheric methane into noctilucent clouds. And those noctilucent clouds would be made of diamond dust, something that David Keith mentioned at SRM 2015 as an option for geoengineering solar radiation management or albedo modification to avert global warming and climate change. So this is all related. Very, very much related. Generate sunshine reflecting noctilucent clouds in increasing amounts in the mesosphere, which will reflect the sun's energy back into space above the HAARP transmitter. 4 other facilities in the world: High Pass, Alaska; Arecibo, Puerto Rico, we covered that; Iskat, Norway, we covered that; Sura, Russia. I guess I should show you guys Sura. We didn't show you that one. So go back over here to the little menu and come over here. Let's close that one, open that one up, and here is Sura. Over in Russia, looks like this. Let's see if we got a good footage of it. Also a rectenna. Doesn't look quite as pretty. Has a bunch of poles, as you can see here. I do have some photos of it here. Let's see that. Very big picture there with some grainy photos in the background. That's what they look like. So basically poles, rings, lots of strings tied between them. But this is the Russian version of HAARP. And it's right there in that place I'm not going to dare try to pronounce. And you can see all the statistics on that. There are 144 antennas on this, 4.5 to 93 megahertz and 750,000 watts, putting out 190 megawatts. Boom. So that's the Russian version of that. And where were we? Let's close some of this stuff back out. We're on the boat. And that's what they say. And then finally, he also talks about testing this stuff down in Jicamarca, Peru. Gets kind of crazier. In the next video, what I'm going to do is mainly focus on a lot of these facilities that I have not covered tonight, such as the super darn facilities around the world, many of which can be found at the poles, and they are quite numerous in comparison to the ionospheric heaters. You can see the ionospheric heaters in red, and the yellow are the super darn, all around the North Pole down there too. And it gets a little weirder and weirder and weirder as we go into the ELF stuff, and we go into the missile defense radars, which are really powerful. And this is where we end up with our next video, which is going to be about the future and all of these technologies. What's the purpose of it? Why so many case rockets at Poker Flat Rocket Range, Iondoya Rocket Range? I intend to map all of these rocket ranges. I just had an aha moment and realized they are not on climateviewer.org, but we will map out these rocket ranges around the world as well. Of course, we will have to look into how lasers and other things, mix into that. Talk about some of the weapon systems that are related to all of this. Of course, get into the space fence, which is what a lot of this is about. And really what I see the future of this whole space weather modification via chemical releases from chemtrails in space. So I hope that this was an informative video. I hope that you guys will go over to weathermodificationhistory.com. And when you get there, remember there's a little button right here at the bottom. No matter where you are on the page, it's a little clock. You click it, it'll bring it up. Just click on space weather, and it's going to show you only the entries related to this chemtrails from space thing. And that'll keep you sane while going through all of these entries. But hell, if you're crazy, click show all and hold on to your pants. Weather modification history, of course, starts in 1800 to present, covering everything from steering hurricanes to, melting the North Pole, and the list goes on. Just go check it out, weathermodificationhistory.com, climateviewer.org, which is, of course, is my 3D map, which is free and open source to the public, and climateviewer.com, which is my homepage, my blog, where I do all my dirt, and it is where conspiracy meets reality. Over here on the sidebar, you can see my YouTube channel, Jim Lee Climate Viewer, all one word. I hope you guys will subscribe and tell people about me, even though apparently my freaking channel does not exist tonight. I mean, it's the end of the video. Come on, let's see if my channel exists now. Let me refresh it. My channel exists. That's what my channel looks like. Thank you, YouTube, for getting your feces consolidated during this live broadcast. And that's fortunate. So, and I haven't mentioned this enough, but I added a new section on my YouTube channel right here that says must see TV. And these are the videos that I consider to be the most important on my channel. These two right here. Please watch them, share them around, in addition to this series I'm doing right now, Chemtrails from Space. I will do part 3 next week on Sunday. Share this information around. It is hella tough breaking through the bullshit background on the internet today. And this is information I think that is very important to a lot of people who are very interested in knowing where's all this barium and aluminum coming from, and being concerned about hearing the guys at NASA shooting off rockets, putting lithium in the sky, and they all are going, what the hell is going on? So I hope that this has really answered a lot of your questions, fleshed it out a little better for you, and then that way you can be better armed to go and spread the gospel of the truth of, holy crap, we use references to back up the things we talk about. So I really appreciate you guys hanging out with me tonight. I would appreciate your support. Of course, I'm over here at climateviewer.com. At the bottom of every page is links to the PayPal and GoFundMe. That is the only source of income I receive from this work. There are no advertisements on any of my websites, and I do appreciate your support. So guys, stay tuned, youtube.com/Jim Lee Climate Viewer. I will be back next week. I really appreciate you guys hanging out in chat, man. You guys kept me interested, kept me with some side notes there. Let me give a shout out to those guys. What's up, James White, Wonder Woman, See America, Kathy? Good CME thing there. Good CME thing. It's probably what it was. And like I said, I wish I would have got video of that dot matrix printer turning itself on and spitting out garbage during like a X9 or something like that. We had a really big one, and I was just watching it go. So true. Feces consolidated. That's right. Love you guys, mean it. So with that being said, let me try to dig my way into my Hangouts thing. Unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing's going to get better. It's not. Check out Chemtrails from Space, part 3 next week at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Please share this video and the previous one, part 1, around, because I think it's time that people really get that I'm using the word chemtrails to piss a lot of people off, but really underneath, I want you to get it. And chemtrails come in many forms. They come from planes. They come from rockets. They come from ground-based cloud seeding generators. They come from all kinds of places, but nobody is talking about chemtrails from space. Help me change that. Thank you very much.